Good morning. Today we have Matt Brindley with us from Rethink Drink UK over in the UK, helping people with the Sinclair method all throughout the United Kingdom and Europe. And he is also one of our coaches here at your Sinclair Method Coaching. Good morning, Matt. Well, I guess it's afternoon for you, isn't it?
It is. It's just tipped to 4 o'clock here. So yeah, it's. I wish I could start again today, get another 5 hours in. But yeah, we're 4 o'clock over here in the UK.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, it's been quite the month, quite the couple of months actually. But one of the things that I want to talk about today is just I want to be really casual as we're talking, um, because I think that when people think about getting a TSM coach, they start just thinking about, okay, this is an accountability person and this is regimented and this is all about my alcohol and this is only about my progress and this is only about things that are relevant to the things I do in order to drink less or to not drink at all. And I mean, as coaches, you and I know that there's so much more to it than that. And keep finding myself, at least with my clients and with people in peer support groups, hearing the question, how come some days are just so hard and it's working better on some days and not? And so I want to talk a little bit, and I talked about this last month with Jody a little bit, but let's talk about how capacity and our emotional capacity, where we're at any given moment in our day, in our week, in our month, how a coach can help to point out those spots that can cause some hiccups in the process. And
Yeah, I think it's not an easy question because I think ultimately we often forget that we actually live lives and life gets in the way as well. Like you take your AUD out of the picture altogether, you can still have a good day, you can still have a bad day. Like you can still wake up in the morning and for some reason you just can't fire up. The coffee's not doing anything. You just feeling a bit low mood. You just have an off day. It's circumstances, situations, external. Somebody said something at work that's now kind of playing on my mind a bit. What did they mean by that? There's so many things that it's easy to think, well, this is, a tablet and TSM and I should be reducing my drink. But like related to alcohol, there's so many other things. Like we're using it as a coping tool. We're using it to celebrate. We're using it to decompress. We're using it to forget. We're using it to switch off. So we've got all of these things. And, if we get a stressful period in life, it's easy to kind of forget about the stress because, and look at the numbers. I often say this, don't turn this into a numbers game. Your relationship with alcohol, you cannot judge that by numbers. A relationship like a relationship with my wife, I don't judge her on the numbers that she scored today. My relationship with my wife is, it's a two-way thing. It's how I feel about it. It's, that ultimately it's what's within me. And I think it's good to have a coach to kind of pull you out of that and go, well, that's great. Units have come down, or even units have gone up, but what did you take from that? What was the circumstances? What was the situation? We've got this tool at the Rethink Drink. Dead simple. What, why, lesson, apply. What happened? Why did it happen? What's the lesson? And how can you apply it to the same situation if you were going to be in that situation again? And it's to me, sometimes it's about kind of breaking situations down because we would never really sit down on the sofa and do that ourselves. Very rare that we'll grab a pen and paper and go, well, what happened in this situation? Whereas you've got a coach and you can talk through it, like what's going on here? Why did that spike up? Who were you with? What was your environment? What happened on that particular day? So kind of deconstruct the situation and then put it back in a way where you're like, I've taken the lesson from that, good
Yeah.
or bad.
And and so what I'm hearing as I'm listening to you talk, Matt, is you're very little of this actually has to do with the alcohol itself. And I
Mm.
think that that's where the Sinclair method is so much different from other recovery modalities, because in other modalities, it's all about how much did you drink? How long did you drink? How often do you drink? What are you
Numbers
doing
game.
to and I think that so much, especially in the sobriety only uh, setups, there everything is blamed on the alcohol. So
Mm.
it's, you're a liar because of alcohol. It's your addiction that causes you to be bad at changing your habits. And yet what you're saying speaks to the fact that almost everything outside of the cravings just comes down to human behavior.
Yeah, and I absolutely, this is my, if I could have a hot topic, it's human behavior, like how we act, the way we break down a situation. If someone says something, why we flare up. It's ultimately it's the lens that we're looking through. There's this kind of thing where you could look out of a window and it's raining, and someone will look out of that window and they'll go, "Oh my God, it's raining again," like as if this won't stop. Like, when are we going to get a break? It's so grey and miserable. And another person can look out of the same window on the same day at the same time and go, "Oh my God, I love a storm." Same window, it's just a different perspective. And that is ultimately human behavior. Like, we can change that. Like, we can change our state in an instant. Like, even now, like I could say to you, give me 10 things that are not going so well at the moment, in whatever, in your relationship, in life, with friends, with family. Give me 10 things. And because we're dialed into the negative, you'll pretty quickly go, yeah, that's wrong, that's negative. I'm having a problem here. That's really annoying me. But if I then said, right, take a little bit of time and come up with, and your state at the end of that, you'll feel pretty low. Whereas if we said, look, do me a list, 10 things that have happened in the last, well, where are we? 1st of August tomorrow. In the last 7 months, write down 10 amazing things that have happened. Go through your phone reel, have a look at your photos. Like, who did you reach out to? Who have you spoke to? What experiences have you done? And write down that list. It will take you longer because we're not wired up to look for the positive. So it will take you longer. But your state at the end of looking through that list and going through their memories will be completely different. And what you're saying there, is how long, like, one of the biggest things for me, which I would say kind of accelerated me and my in my AUD, if you like, the thing that really accelerated the progression of it was the numbers game. Like, if I was alcohol, like, I can't remember the last time I had a drink. I went on holiday a couple of weeks ago. We had a cocktail by the pool, however many days ago that was. But if I was on an abstinent-based program, I would tell you the day, the minute, the second, the hour since my last drink. How many days has it been? I'm this many days alcohol free. It is my identity. Like, it's everything that I'm dialed in on. Now, that's great, and if you're on that kind of program, amazing. And if that's working for you, amazing. But what happened for me and what happens to so many people, that then becomes a pressure. So you start getting to 14 days, 21 days, 28 days, craving starts to build up, and you think, oh God, I'm doing really well here. I don't want to, kind of reset that. And then lo and behold, ultimately 90, 95% of people with AUD are going to relapse. Then that becomes the pressure of, oh my God, I've let myself down. I've just blown 21 days. What a waste of my time. Again, we're all dialed into the negative. Like, how could I do that? What a waste of time. And then we start the negative self-talk. I can never do anything. I'm not good enough. I'll never achieve this. Like, I might as, and then again, this is just me personally. I would stay in a binge because I didn't want to deal with the facts. Like, I was so, like, ashamed of the next person I saw. Oh, Matt, how are you getting on now? Last time I saw you, it was 20 days. yeah, I'm back drinking again. It didn't work out, whatever, whatever. And that ultimately, it pulled me down and down. And with TSM, one of the things massively, massively important is to record the units, but don't turn it into a numbers game. The units are really to spot traits. Like I've got a guy I'm working with at the moment. Every Tuesday, little bump. Well, what's going on Tuesdays? Oh, we go to I don't know what, some sort of club. We go to the club and whatever. I'm like, that's actually accounting for like a 20-30% increase. Wow, I never even noticed that. And now it's like we can make that adjustment, and that's kind of normalizing things out. So it's difficult. So somebody asked, the whole numbers game thing, because somebody asked me this yesterday, which is really weird that you've kind of mentioned this. And it was, what does the control mean to you? And when I first went through this, the control to me then was, I need to turn this into a numbers game so I can bring the numbers down. I can make it alcohol free. So basically, I was trying to create tangible goals where I could tick a box. And ultimately, in the beginning, yeah, that was great. But after that runs out and you hit a certain number, pretty much, I don't want to call it the honeymoon period, but often it's around the end of the honeymoon period. People go, well, it's not going so well anymore. And it's like, well, that's the time where we now start changing behavior. And that's the relationship, not the numbers game at that kind of stage, I would say.
Yeah, and it's interesting, listening to you talk about the struggle of getting those higher numbers of alcohol free days when you're trying to strive for sobriety. And I feel like where progress is concerned, people on TSM take that same mentality to it. And it's almost a mentality of, I have shown I can do something, therefore, I should be able to do that every single day forever or better. And yet, life just doesn't work that way. You don't see Major League Baseball players go out, hit their first home run, and then hit a home run every single time they're at bat. You don't learn an instrument and instantaneously, after hitting each key correctly once, do it correct and perfect forever.
Yeah.
And so I find myself reminding people that, just because you did it once doesn't mean you don't have to continue practicing it. And a lot of TSM is just practicing, reminding yourself that you have control.
Mm.
I mean, you have to get through that craving part, the where the pill is going through the extinction sessions before they're getting to just the reinforcement. But I spend more time not talking about alcohol in my coaching sessions than I do actually talking about alcohol itself.
I'd absolutely agree with that. The other thing as well, like again, kind of human behavior, we all have our ways of decompressing, switching off, dealing with stress. Like just because, me, in a previous life, and my thing was alcohol, just because I put my hands up and said, hey, I've messed up with my camera now. Just because I've put my hands up and said, I'm struggling here, that doesn't take me away from the rest of the population that particularly, they will deal with stress in a different way. So some people will deal with stress by jumping on Amazon and spending a couple of £100 on Amazon, on eBay, some retail therapy. Some people will vape more. Some people will smoke more. Some people will gamble. Some people will whatever. We've all got our ways. Some people have got the healthier way. They'll go to the gym. They'll decompress. They'll switch off. It's just that our habit and our routine, because of, how we've dealt with things in the past, is just that we turn to drink. and we've all got our vices, we've all got our ways of dealing with it, and it's important to recognize that we're human as well. It's not just because we've said we've got a problem over here and we're actually addressing it. It's not like we're ignoring it. That that doesn't allow us to not have stressful days, and sometimes stress means I'll have another glass of wine extra, which is not in line with what I've done on the previous week. Um, Progress, not perfection, and sometimes it's like we often say that TSM, it's a 50-50 process. The tablet does 50% of the work, that does the pharmacological side of things. And then the other 50% is on you. It's changing your habits, your routines, your triggers, your environment, mindset, all of the other, these kind of things. So, but that progress, your 50% doesn't need to be 50% every night. It doesn't have to be 49%. Even just you taking your tablet, waiting the hour, logging the drinks, and you're just like, look, I just need a night off from pushing, pushing, pushing. Even if you do 5%, well, that's still progress. It's not perfection, but it's still progress. And, it's a journey ultimately. And there will come a day where you're like, do you know what? I'm ready to push the boundaries a bit. I'm here to see what I can do tonight. And that, depending on where you're at in your journey, that might be, do you know what? I'm not going to take my tablet until 7 o'clock tonight. So I'm going to drink from 8. And normally I drink at 5, and that can be, I'm feeling good, feeling a bit more energetic, feeling a bit more positive. I'm going to push myself till 7 o'clock tonight. And if that, that's massive progress.
And I love that you're talking about the fact that you don't always have to give that full 50% all the time. Um, I see a lot of people who the their progress has kind of stalled, and there are two different ways that people get into a stall. One is they've just made a whole bunch of big changes, and they're kind of pressing pause. They're pressing pause. They're making sure that the big changes that they've done are sticking. They
Yeah.
don't have anything really left to continue moving forward, so they're just kind of they're okay for the moment with the progress they've made. They know that they're not where they want to be yet, but they need to press pause for a while and just kind of settle in and stabilize and recover from where what they've done so far.
Yeah.
And
We
then
got,
there's the other side,
oh
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
people who are stuck, and they're stuck, and they just want to stay the course instead of and when you feel stuck, you've got to change something up. Yeah, like you can't continue to do the same thing and expect that your results are going to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
how do you help your clients kind of differentiate between when they're taking a necessary pause and not pushing for progress so that they stabilize where they're at with the success they have so far, versus when they're stuck and they really kind of need to start applying a little extra pressure to themselves and application.
Yeah. Amazing question. So this is like, we call it a plateau. So, and quite often we will force a plateau because you cannot keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. It's unrealistic. It's the reason why everybody, or whatever the percentage is, I don't know, New Year's, 31st of December, we all do this thing where we say, I'm doing this, I'm changing my diet, I'm now going to a gym, I'm not drinking, I'm not vaping, I'm not gambling, I'm not. And we, all these amazing things, like this ideal version 10 of 10 out, 10 out of 10 of me. But the reason we can't do it is because it's unsustainable. It's so far away from who we are currently that to change all that overnight, you can't maintain it because you're not that person. Like it's that kind of there's that saying, if you're um, with your environment, if you hang around with 10 drug addicts, you'll become the 11th. If you hang around with 10 millionaires, you'll become the 11th. It's that environment that you've got to kind of understand. Like, there's statistics in America. I was reading about this the other day. Like, is it basketball or baseball or whatever? But these people who have come from, pretty normal backgrounds get into these big leagues, they're all of a sudden making crazy money that they don't understand how to operate with, and they're bankrupt within years, and they had millions literally years before because they're not that person. They're not the person that has that mindset of money and how to manage it. And it's, that's an extreme, if you like, but just to pull this back here, it's good to let things settle. It's good to plateau, because what that means is you're now normalizing this new level. So if you come, I'm trying to think of one this week, it's like a 40% reduction, within 2, 3 weeks. And it's like, we definitely don't need to push any more further than this. If you can maintain this, let's just stay here week, 2 weeks, even 2.5 weeks, and we'll get to a position where we're like, that's normal now. Okay, well, now that's normal. Now we've come to that plateau. Let's go again. Let's see what else we're capable of. Let's start, changing some numbers. Let's start looking at mixing intermittent drinks, lower, changing the routine. We'll make some changes, but it's really important that we let people level and normalize and plateau. The other thing as well we've got to bear in mind, tolerance levels. Like, so, with alcohol, when you kind of reducing that, your tolerance is also coming down as well. So it's important to have a plateau so that the brain can, all this endorphins that it's all been used to, and it's really important to let that level out, like, and for your brain to normalize things before we go again. Um, the other one where, people are stuck, um, to me, it's one of two things. Like, one is leverage, like, what's the why? Like, why are you doing this? Like, what do we need to create? Like, in terms of, like, to make the next thing, is the plan and the strategy that you've got, is that I'm just taking a tablet and I'm just expecting this to come down? Because I hear that all the time. Well, it's not working anymore. Well, what are you doing differently? And I'm taking the tablet. Well, I've got this thing, that's kind of, I say this to clients and they're like, Matt, that has just opened my eyes up to something different. So you imagine when you take naltrexone, in your brain, you've just turned learning mode on. Now, if you don't do anything different, your brain learns nothing different. Whereas if you start to intermittent drink, you know what, I'm going to start a bit later. I'm going to set an evening alarm, like, to check in with myself. The brain is now starting to go, oh, okay, something's different. I'm more aware of something. So that toggling learning mode on, like, do something different. If you're not trying to force a plateau, this is leverage in terms of, like, what am I trying to achieve here? Like, and what's the next step? I think that's really important. Like, what is my why? Why am I doing this? And then kind of the final one really is, like, are you just happy with where you're at? Like, we've got this ideology of, and we all come from the world of abstinence, like, because it's, what we're told, it's what we see, that success with around alcohol is abstinence. So, but in someone's mind, like, if you're happy with where you're at, well, what are you pushing for? Is it just in your head? You're thinking, well, I need to keep going. I need to keep reducing it. I need to keep, or are you just happy with your drinking? Like, because that's okay too. Like, I think we forget that. Um, like, part of my own story was, so before I started TSM, like, kind of my ideal version of me, a 10 out of 10 Matt Brindley, was a Friday night and a Saturday night drinker only, midweek, nothing, just a Friday and Saturday night. And I was under 14 units, which is the UK government guidelines. And I stayed there for probably 4, 5, 6 months. Yeah. So, and I outstayed my welcome there. But that was because I felt that alcohol controlled me for so long that I wanted to control it for a bit. and I wanted to kind of flex and peacock, around with, oh, I can stay within the UK government guidelines and I can only drink at weekends, So for me, it was like, this is amazing. And then I stayed there for almost probably too long because I was getting to a point where I was like, I'm really kind of tired of this. And then I was like, well, what was the next step for me? Like, what really do I want things to look like? And I was like, let's try alcohol free for a bit. And it almost was accidental, my alcohol free, just because of being busy. But yeah, I think it's important to kind of look at what your goals like. If you feel stuck, well, that's because there's somewhere you want to be. You might already be where you want to be. It's about reevaluating.
And I love that you say and acknowledge that in this case, a person may actually already be where they want to be. And this is where I find that having the connection with a coach who is familiar with what your drinking patterns are, who talks with you through your evolving goals and what your thought processes are, can really help in this situation, because I can't even tell you how many people over the years have been like, yeah, I just don't know if it's even working for me anymore. Is it ever going to work? Is it ever going to work? And we start talking about what they drank like before TSM,
Mm.
what their current attitudes and behaviors are. And they go from being absolutely frustrated with themselves and thinking it's not working to being like, wow, wow, I actually feel really good and positive about this. And
Yeah.
nothing has changed. I mean, it's a half-hour session. They're literally just getting a little outside perspective and the right questions so that they can talk their way through what these changes have been. And I don't think that happens without forming a connection. You can't really do this with, an online peer support, text based, unless you're just really having a conversation. Setting
Mm.
out a post, having a bunch of people comment on it with their opinions doesn't necessarily always have that ability to see where you are in that moment.
Yeah. It's so limited what really you can say. Again, like just going back to what we were talking right at the very beginning, like the environment, like what's going on in your circumstances, your situation. You can put a post on there saying, "Oh, this is not working. My drinking's going up." Well, they could have been fired from their job last week. Their husband could have left them, and um, well, that might be the reason why you're drinking. It's not nothing to do with the naltrexone. It's nothing, it's circumstances and situations. But how do you get that across?
Yeah.
Um, I love this point, and it's actually one of the, a real concept of ours, which is, plan forwards but measure backwards. There was a girl on our one of our group calls. I think I might have even shared this with you, but a couple of months ago now, and again, just felt really flat. Like, I'm not sure this is working. It's, I don't know. So data over drama. That's another one of ours. Let's get the data. Let's have a look at the graph. Let's see where it is. So, and this is absolutely God honest, genuine. I think we were somewhere around the 4 month mark. She hadn't been blackout drunk since starting with us. Her alcohol consumption was less than 50%. And the reality is she was just in a bit of a plateau. It just felt like momentum hadn't carried on. And I always say, that measure backwards, but, just imagine that 4 months and one day ago, I had said to you, you'll have never, in 4 months' time, you wouldn't have been blackout drunk and you'll have reduced your alcohol units by 50%. And honestly, Jenny, there was probably another 5 or 6 things that were like massively positive. Her husband had noticed she'd lost weight, anxiety was lower, better mental health, And if I'd have told you that 4 months and 1 day ago, that in 4 months' time, this is the result, would you be happy? She was like, oh my God, yes. And I was like, well, that's where we are. Like it's like the job of a coach, like we don't have the answers. Like that it's not for us. Like I can't tell you, obviously we make suggestions and we kind of build it around what the feedback is. But ultimately, a coach's job is to ask the right questions to unlock the right answers. And you, to have that with, in what we do, like the amount of times that people have said to me, Matt, I've never told anyone this. Nobody's ever known this. Like my husband never, I haven't even told my husband I'm doing this program. It's that connection where you're like, this person gets me, and it's like we hear it and see it with, so many people, and we're all the same. Like we really, really are, in what we do, in how we behave, in how we think. It's just that when we're the person going through it, we feel so isolated and like we're the only person in the world going through this. Um, and ultimately, I'm not plugging Rethink Drink in any way here, but when we built the concept of Rethink Drink and how we want it to look, feel, behave, support, it's to make sure that nobody feels like they're alone in this. It's to every one of our clients has got a number. They can reach out at any time and they'll get a response. That is because I was so alone in when I went through my drinking. I don't want other people to go through and experience that. And yeah, I think, like you say, it's that connection and knowing that, someone gets you and understands you, and it's a safe space where we hold space for people to be open and honest and measure backwards. And sometimes it is a straight conversation in terms of, come on, let's give your head a wobble here. Like we are doing good, we are doing well. We're just having a bad week. Um, funnily enough, that's one of the first conversations I'll ever have with a new client is before we start, I promise you, you're going to have a bad day. And I promise you, you're going to have a bad week. So with that in mind, let's be open-minded about this and going forward. And, that breaks down barriers as well. It's we don't live in a perfect world. We don't live perfect lives. And the amazing thing about TSM is it meets you where you're at, whatever your life looks like. It's a few golden rules, and we're pretty close.
So I don't know about you, but I find myself spending a lot of time kind of undoing some of the damage of the powerlessness talk of other modalities, and reminding the people I coach and people online, that they actually are capable of making good decisions where alcohol is concerned. And by helping to point out and helping them discover those small good decisions that they can make so they can continue building on them, because I find that a lot of the discouragement, a lot of the frustration still seems to come from people not being able to trust themselves yet, because in addition to the weight of the alcohol addiction, for so long so many people have come at them and said, you are basically trash, you have no power over any of this. And so they've lost that inner guidance of their own. and and they, even when they're making good decisions, they're kind of treating those as though they're a fluke. And
Yeah.
so I spend a lot of time trying to help my clients to recognize the good decisions that they have made and that they're capable of making. Do you find yourself doing the same thing?
Oh, like 100%. That is, that it's funny, isn't it? How I was, almost indoctrinated by it. Like I did the AA route. That was, I tried hard with that. I just couldn't maintain my sobriety. And when you're in there and things are going well and it's great, well, that's, the higher powers, it's doing its thing. But the second things went wrong, I was at fault. When things were going great, it was nothing to do with me. It was the higher power. But when things were wrong, well, oh, Matt, you're not doing the steps right. Anyway, I don't want to go too far down that road, but it's, and alcohol does this without that environment anyway. It steals your self-worth. It steals your self-confidence. And, you know, ultimately, whenever a new client comes to us, whenever we have a conversation, we've got to bear in mind, like 100% of the time, and this might sound harsh, 100% of the time, whatever method you've tried has failed. So you are ultimate, and again, human behavior, we're all dialed into the negative. We're supposed to look for it. As soon as something goes rocky with TSM, it's like, oh, it's not working. Because past experience has proved to you whatever you did with your alcohol has gone 100% wrong 100% of the time. You're looking for the problem. You're looking for the negative. You're looking for the failure. Like, when is this going to go wrong? Like, picking fault with yourself almost. Like, might be drinking half the units, but you drank 2 units more than you did last week on one night. Oh, I didn't do well that night. I'm sorry about that. And it's like, what? You forgot, you lost track of time. You had an extra beer. You were having a drink with a friend. You were enjoying yourself. There's not an issue. Like, it's not. It, it's not about, like, it's progress, not perfection. We kind of say that. I think the other thing as well, like, this is something my coach said to me. This is before TSM. It was I was in a really bad place. Mental health wise, and I reached out to get a coach. Obviously, my alcohol was a massive factor in that, and we were working together, and he said his thing was, Matt, nobody's coming to save you. Like, you have got to do this yourself. And like, when I kind of go back to the AA and this relying on a higher power, it was never going to save me, because it was up to me to do that process and program and do that work. So nobody's going to save you. And it's the amount of, like, we get, like, emails every day, and the subject line is help me, save me, like, all, like, a lot. And it's that thing of, like, nobody is going to save you, but there's some tools over here. If you come and pick up these tools, and I can show you how you use them, and I can show you how to sharpen that sword, and I can show you how to, put that together. And if you strategize it in this way, you can save yourself, and I can help you do that. Absolutely. But I don't, it's not me doing this for you. You've got to do that. You've got to pick up the tools. And that goes for whatever, whatever road you go down with it. However, when we're trying to treat a neurological problem with willpower, we're fighting against science as well as, trying to save ourselves. And it's why people don't win the battle.
Yeah.
The odds are stacked against people.
Yeah. In addition to the tools, I find myself taking. I kind of take the stance of, yeah, you have to do the work. You have to be the one to actually choose which tools that I can help you find, but I'm going to give you a safe place to figure out what tools you want. I'm going to help you choose the tools that may work best for you. Ultimately, it's your choice, but I'll help you to decide. And I'm going to stand here and remind you that you're worth helping. You're worth empowering. You're worth getting to be who you want to be, because there's such a low sense of self-worth. There's And then there's the flip side of that. There's the frustration from people who have absolutely everything else in their life.
Mm,
They have it exactly the way they want it. And yet this addiction, this pull back to alcohol, it keeps eluding them, and they can't figure out why. And so allowing them to just sit with the fact that, okay, you have something that you don't know how to do this yet, but look at everything else that you are able to accomplish. Let's see what we can take from that, and how you've made success in other areas of your life, and how can we apply that to your alcohol use? How can we apply that to your TSM? Because in most cases, what's happening is they're just trying to they're applying plenty of tools. They're just not grabbing the right tools.
mm.
They're not seeing it in the same light, and a lot of that's because of the indoctrination into any drinking is a failure. It's the carrying of the shame. It's forgetting the fact that our our brains can be petulant little teenagers sometimes, and they fight back. And and so a lot of trying to do behavior change to work as a partner with the TSM process and with the medication is kind of reparenting your brain a little bit. It's kind of saying, okay, well, we didn't quite get it this time, but okay, what can we do better next time?
Yeah. Yeah. Why lesson apply? Like that's literally a staple thing that we have worksheets where we kind of pull them through, kind of extract that thing, and like it's just what would you do in this situation if you were in it again? Like what would you do differently next time? That's all it is. But and I love what you said there. I can't do this yet. It's something I say with my kids. Um, the yeah, going back to that self-worth, self-confidence, like it doesn't matter what you've got in your life. Like, what really surprises me is, this it's the gray area drinkers that are um are really the ones that are struggling. Like to my mind, before we kind of started, rethink drink off, it was that we would be helping the guy at the end of the street drinking out of the paper bag. Like that kind of stereotypical, guy, the one that's really struggling, that's like lost his family, he's burnt his house to the, his business to the ground, he's left, he's been kicked out from his wife, he's left, to my mind, that's who we were going to be helping. Like that was, but it couldn't be further from the truth. That's probably 5 or 10% of the people we help. Like the majority of the people we help are people who were like me, like functioning, like completely on the outside, operating normally, business owners, your school teacher, your child's school teacher. It's the normal, you know society that, this, I say it's a pandemic hiding in plain sight. um, but that self-worth, that self-confidence, just kind of dialing back into the other point I made earlier, for you to have tried to do something, and this was me 7 days a week trying not to drink, 7 days a week failing, 7 days a week. Oh, okay, well, tomorrow, 7 days a week, like this argument of, should I, shouldn't I shouldn't do it tonight, but yeah, I got away with it last night. Let's do this. 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Like that's my story, by the way. But even if it's, binge drinking, well, that's like 52 times a year, or, for some people, like of berating themselves, of, going in on themselves, like, why can't you do this? You're a failure. why can't we get, I'm successful over here, but I can't seem to get a handle on this. And it just chips away at your self-confidence, your self-worth, day after day after day after day. And, the
Sounds
habit,
exhausting.
it is, it's absolutely exhausting. And the way that we talk to our, like I say to, clients, the habit I'm talking about is not just about when you've got a glass in your hand and you're drinking. That's not just the habit I'm talking about. I'm talking about the habit the next day when you wake up and you're talking to yourself, berating yourself, you're giving yourself like the hardest time. Like I was talking to a client earlier today and she was like, like really being harsh on herself. And I was like, would you ever talk to me like that? Would you ever talk to me the way you've spoken to yourself today? And she was like, nope. I was like, have you ever spoken to anyone like that? No. Stop speaking to yourself like that because that is a habit in and of itself. And and let's reverse this. If I had spoken to you like that from 10 o'clock this morning until 4 or 5 o'clock this evening, so 5, 6 hours of, you're never going to get this, you can't do this, let's have another drink tonight, forget this, why are you even trying, why are you bothering? If I'd have done that to you for 4 or 5 hours solid, no wonder you want to have a drink at the end of the day. Like, it sounds exhausting to me. I'd want to drink at the end of the day. But we don't realize that we've got these habits, and that's how we're talking to ourselves, and that's how we're treating ourselves because our self-worth is so low. And you're right earlier, what you said, like I would say less than 50% of what I do as a coach is about alcohol. Like alcohol is actually a really small component of what we do here. The rest of it is about you, the person, you, the individual, like what's going well. Like again, that what, why lesson apply, that's not always for the negative. Like things are going well. Well, what happened? Why did it happen? How can we repeat that behavior? How can we repeat that success? It's not just about negative and well, what's going wrong here. It's also about the positive and what we can do to, create things. Um, yeah, yes, that the habit is not just in the drinking, it's, in pockets of other areas of our lives as well.
Yeah, it's I don't know where I heard it, but I like years ago something like 80% of our internal chatter is negative.
Mm.
And I would believe that because I live in my own head. That's
It,
it's
it's what
it
we're designed to do,
yeah.
like that I forget the part of the brain that it's called, but it's the prehistoric part of the brain. It will come back to me in a second. But that is designed to and that's basically the subconscious mind where that lives, and it's designed to keep us alive. So it's designed to regulate heart rate, digestion, blood flow, blinking, all of these things, these autonomous behaviors. But it's also responsible of alerting us to danger. So it's supposed to look for negatives. It's supposed to go, hey Matt, again, prehistorically, hey Matt, there's a saber-toothed tiger. Hey Matt, there's a, I don't know, dinosaur, and that, don't eat that berry, don't drink that liquid, these warning signs that come up. The reality is we don't have physical danger in our lives anymore, but that prehistoric part of the brain still exists and it's not evolved. So what it does is it now gives us a negative in everything, and that can be you scrolling through Facebook, social media. Oh, look what they've got. Look what I haven't got. And it's that part of the brain, again, subconscious mind, dialed into the negative, autonomous behavior, habits, drinking behaviors, all inside of that prehistoric part, that's that subconscious part of the brain. The subconscious, again, sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. The subconscious brain is also responsible for keeping us alive, i.e., heart rate, blood flow. And when we have those, and when we say that somebody's tipped into addiction or dependency, what essentially we're saying is that dependency is upon them endorphins. The subconscious mind has become confused and has adopted those endorphins as part of its survival mechanism. So we're now subconsciously chasing endorphins because they're not natural to us or at that volume. So it will start to change our behavior. It will start to change the way we act, the way we talk to people, the way um, that we behave. Like for me, that was hiding drink. That I'm not that type of person, but I was doing that because that survival mechanism within me was allowing, was creating that in order for me to get those endorphins. Um, Again, like let's bring that negative self-talk into it. Your subconscious brain and your conscious brain, they're part of the same brain. So you're almost fighting against yourself because your subconscious brain knows your conscious brain inside out. It's the same brain. So if it knows that it can punish you for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and at the end of that day you'll go, I'm gonna have a drink tonight. Well, guess what it'll do every single day? It will punish you and it will give you a hard time because at the end of that day, guess what? It gets its survive. It activates that survival mechanism so that you drink at the end of the day. It, and again, human behavior. I love this stuff. Like this is literally my flavor. uh, Love it.
And as we're talking about all this, just as a reminder to anyone who sees this, is that coaching is still very different from therapy. In fact, I like as a coach, for me, one of my highlights is when I'm talking with one of my clients and they mention that something we're talking about is also something they're talking about with their therapist.
Mm.
When people have the multiple layers of support, then like that's even better because now you have different perspectives at from different angles to help you to figure out the answers you already have within you to reach your goals. Um, so we've got a little less than 10 minutes left. So I'm going to do a subject change here. This is something, you asked me before we went on the air, how the book was going. And while it's gone a little slower of late for all the many reasons, one of the topics that I've been delving into recently is the difference between response to TSM and results. Because I think people are using response and results interchangeably. People are, I mean, I'm pretty sure that we started it back when we were still C3, the whole concept of early responders or slower responders. And what I'm coming to realize as time goes by is you're either a responder to naltrexone or you're not. There's no early or late, but what may take longer or come faster are the tangible results. So I'd love to hear your opinion on the topic, Matt.
Uh, my genuine opinion is that TSM works for 99% of people. There's probably 1% that have a genuine allergy that they can't take it. It's just that they don't give it enough. Either they're not compliant or they've just not given it a long enough timeline. Um, we've, we have clients that have worked with or obtained naltrexone in the UK from other organisations, and within 3 months, and been with them for 18 months, say, I can think of two off the top of my head, both 18 months. And one of them within 3 months was like, wow, I didn't know that these are the pieces of the puzzle I needed. And another one took 9 months and exactly the same. It was like, as if this is the result. Like it's so my genuine, honest, genuine belief of working with this for over 2 years now is that that mechanism in the brain works. Like, yeah, maybe there's 1% where um, alcohol works is more favorable on different receptors for other people than mu receptor. for example. So there's always going to be an extreme example of this. But for 99% of people, I would say this works. It's just your compliancy has got to be there, and you give it a long enough timeline. Um, Tangible results can come in so many shapes and forms. Like I've some people will go, "Yeah, oh, I don't like the flavor of wine anymore," and it's like they've seen that in a group, and it's like, well, I like the flavor of wine, so it doesn't. Does that mean it doesn't work for me? And it's like it's that interpretation. You're
I'm
laughing because
laughing
it's so
because
true,
I've seen it multiple times.
hundreds of
So
times. Yeah,
so many times.
and
I'm
it's
laughing because
like
it's true.
yeah, and it's that it's that thing of it appears in so many ways, and it can be so subtle. Like I've worked with some people 3 4 months, and it's like, when's this going to happen? Like, I'm like, it is happening. It's just happening. Like for you, it's just happening at a slower rate. And honestly, with some people, it can be like the next month, absolute penny drop moment. Like I tried to do a couple of days alcohol free, and it turned into a week. And I'm like, and how did you feel about that? Oh, I wasn't even bothered. Like, it is amazing how it approaches people in different ways. Um, I think the other thing as well, I have a coach, and he said something the other day, and he was like, my description is not my prescription. And I was like, that like really resonated with me. Just because somebody described it in some way, that's not your prescription and how it's going to work out for you. Just because like my journey and my path took me that way, that's my description of it. Please don't take that as that's your prescription of how that's going to work for you. They're not, they're two completely different things. Like we we all drink for different reasons. We've had different relationships. We drink different things. Some people drink spirits. What do you call them in America?
Liquor.
Liquor,
Sometimes it's spirits, sometimes it's liquor, sometimes it's hard alcohol. It depends on who you're
hard
talking to
alcohol.
and when.
Some people are wine drinkers. Some people are cider. That affects the brain in different ways. In different volumes. In different ways. So we all have a different, like completely uniquely different relationship with alcohol. Some people drink because of previous experiences. Some people drink because they can't switch off their brain at night, and then that they just rinsed and repeated that for long enough that they became addicted to the endorphins, or dependent on the endorphins. We all have a completely unique and different way, and then on top of that, by the way, we're all biologically completely different as well. So there's no description that anyone's ever going to give you that will be your prescription of how your journey is going to go. It doesn't work that way.
Right. But so I had this, some of this started back, maybe it was a couple months ago. I just wrote a simple sentence and put it in the peer support groups. And I said, every time you take your medication and follow the protocol and drink alcohol, it is working. TSM is working.
Yeah.
And so, that's where I realized people were really confusing responding with results. The results are the things you can see. Mm. Whether or not you're responding to the alcohol or to the naltrexone goes back to your autonomic system that you were talking about earlier, because if you are taking your medication, you're waiting the amount of time to block your opioid receptors, and you drink alcohol, and the endorphins produced from drinking alcohol can't bind to them, you're responding because your body is not accepting those endorphins and binding them and taking the cues from them. You might not have results right away.
Yeah.
You might get past your craving and press pause for a while. You might hit that plateau and stay there for a while. It doesn't mean anything's not, you're still responding. Your results are taking a little bit of a pause, but everybody's results are going to be different because of all of those things that you just said. You know, obviously, somebody who has come to TSM drinking, 120 plus units a week, if they're around the clock drinker, an everyday drinker, and they're drinking high amounts, and they've been doing this for decades, why would anyone think that they would have the same results as someone who is drinking a bottle of wine a night 5 nights a week? Like,
Mm.
they're not, and has just started to become uncomfortable with their drinking.
Yeah.
Your results are always going to be uniquely yours, and they're going to they're going to be a factor of things that you can and can't control. You're not going to be able to control how long it takes for the extinction sessions to get rid of your cravings. You can control how much effort you put in. You can control pulling back on that effort so you don't burn yourself out and set yourself back.
Mm.
Because as you spoke about earlier, there's like, that's the whole reason for intentional plateaus and gaining that ability to sustain the changes. Because if you run through your capacity and you have nothing left, you're going to crash. You're going to set yourself back. You're going to push yourself too hard. And when it's not sustainable, that's when you take those giant steps backward, because you didn't just pause and stay even.
Yeah.
But
And
you're still, whether you're moving forward, moving backward, or staying still for a while, you're still responding to the
yeah.
medication. It's your results that have the ups and downs. And so I think that we're hitting a spot where people are saying, well, I'm a really slow responder, and so it takes 2 years. And that's your results. That's the time that your unique situation is taking. It's not how long it takes you to respond to naltrexone. It's how long it takes you to maybe reach your goals, or
Yeah.
to recognize, as you said earlier, that you're actually where you had wanted to be and you just didn't see it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? You just said there about that relationship. Like, always try and pull an analogy, try and take what we're doing with alcohol, but change the thing so it becomes a bit more relatable. Like, if you imagine that you'd had a relationship with a partner and you only saw them at weekends, and that was for about a year. Okay. And you imagine another person who has lived with another partner for 30 years, and you imagine the severity of that kind of breakup. So somebody who just sees someone at the weekend, again, so binge drinker is what I'm talking about, and only been a year regular and is only just starting to kind of think, hey, you know what, this isn't healthy, versus somebody who's been in a relationship for 30 years and has felt pretty, because you don't get to 30 years with alcohol without thinking, probably 20 years ago, this is not a healthy relationship. And those two separations, those two breakups are going to be, one's going to be uniquely easier than the other. You've formed different relationships with these two people. But again, like with alcohol, we're not talking about a numbers game here. Talking about the relationship with alcohol. Like, what do you use it for? Like, what I've got this thing at the moment. Like, what is the job you are giving alcohol tonight? So if you're going to drink tonight, just to, just have a think. Because it's a tool. At the end of the day, it's a tool to do something for you. So what job are you giving it tonight? And just answer that question. You know, like, if because ultimately then you start labeling it. Well, if you're constantly giving it the label of, I need to switch off, I need to switch off, I need to switch off. Well, Do you reckon we can might find an easier, more healthy way for you to switch off? Maybe once a week, and we just try this other way, and then maybe twice a week, and start again, habits, subconscious mind,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
linked.
Instead of switch on, switch off, I tend to go with, ask yourself, do you need self care tonight or do you need self soothing?
Mm.
And is alcohol going to really do your self care? Are like is this what you truly feel you need tonight to care for yourself? Or are you in a place where you need self soothing? And you know what? Maybe tonight that drink is soothing. Follow
Mm.
the protocol. Don't judge yourself with either decision, but make sure you're making a decision.
Yeah,
Neither one is good or bad,
yeah,
but as long as it's your decision, then you are regaining your ability to make choices around alcohol. You're gaining back your power, and when you have that power, you have the choice again.
mm.
And that's the point of TSM, is to get that choice back of if, when, and how much you drink.
Yeah. Control is the goal. Like wherever it takes you, it's just about mindfulness, control,
I like
and
that.
yeah.
We like, if this were a Ted Lasso episode, that would be slapped up on the doorway. Control is the goal. I love it.
What's Ted Lasso?
Oh, oh.
Oh, oh, should I leave now? And on that note,
Get out of here, Matt. You Formula 1 guy instead of soccer guy.
quickly Google's Ted Lasso.
It's a KC thing.
Okay, okay.
but but yeah, thank you so much, Matt. We ran a little bit over, but it's always wonderful talking with you, and
Yes.
and hopefully something that we've said resonates with somebody today.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it could just be that one nugget where you go on TSM, and do you know what? The pennies drop there. Or it could be that, do you know what? Maybe I do need to give this a try. Maybe I do keep doing the same thing and getting the same results. Maybe I need to try something different to get a different result.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Shaking things up doesn't have to be dramatic. It just that can I mean, in fact, the easier it is, the better. Just
Mm.
anything to shake things up when you're stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. The easier it is, the more sustainable it is, isn't it? And that's what we can maintain.
Yeah, and that's what a coach helps to do. Helps to break those down into those smaller steps that are more manageable and more sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back on.
And next month on August 20th, we'll have Steve Rowe back, which will also be an incredible episode, I'm sure, because Steve is always awesome to talk to. And of course, Steve also works with Matt with Rethink Drink. So yeah, until next month, everybody, have a good time, and you have the power to choose. And if you need a TSM coach, you can find us at yoursinclairmethod.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Control is the goal.